You're showing up, you're creating content, you've got offers, you're doing all of the things, and yet something still feels off. The sales aren't as consistent as they should be. You're working harder than you think you should be to get each and every one of those sales. And somewhere in the back of your mind, there's that nagging feeling that you're losing people, that people are finding you, maybe even liking what they see, but then they're just disappearing. And you can't quite work out where they're going. Hello and welcome to Simple Business Dream Life. I'm Emma Hine, and today we're talking about something that I think is at the root of more business frustration than almost anything else that I see. And that's the gaps in your business, the invisible gaps, the ones that are stopping your sales before they even get on your radar. And the reason most people can't see them is because they're not looking at their business as a whole. They're looking at all of the individual bits, the content, the offers, the emails, the social media, each thing in isolation. And each thing probably looks absolutely fine on its own. But if those things aren't connected, if there are gaps between them, the sales are going to fall through those gaps every single time. What I want to talk about today is a connected business and what that actually looks like and how to spot where yours might actually be leaking. And I want to start with a picture. And this is something that I see all of the time. And I want you to think honestly if you recognize yourself in any of the things I'm going to talk about. So you're busy, like really busy. You're creating the content across multiple platforms. You maybe have a lead magnet or two. You've got offers. You're showing up in different communities. You're going to the networking. You're trying all of the things. And yet your sales feel inconsistent. Some months it's great, others not so great. And you can't quite work out why the effort isn't translating into something more reliable, more consistent. Behind the scenes, you're doing everything manually, chasing leads, following up, reminding people that things exist, managing your clients, creating content, answering the DMs. You're doing all of it all of the time, and often you're doing it on your own too. And then the scaling. The idea of growing this thing any bigger, well, that feels impossible. And it's not because you don't want to, it's because you can't see how you can manage any more than you've already got on your plate. Because the thing you've built, it requires you to hold every single part of it together manually, and you're already at capacity. Now, most people in this position assume they need to work harder or to find a better strategy. But the real answer is almost always much simpler than that. Everything that they're doing is disconnected. And a disconnected business, frankly, that's a leaky business. What an ecosystem does is fixes that. It gives you everything connected and working together with no gaps. So what do I actually mean by that? Because ecosystem is one of those words that sounds impressive but can mean anything. And honestly, I get it feels a little bit corporate. When I talk about an ecosystem, I'm talking about having a clear path that takes somebody from the very first moment they find you all the way through to buying from you, getting a result, then coming back, or maybe sending someone else your way. Every single stage is connected to the next with no gaps and no dead ends. No moments where someone has to figure out what to do next because you told them what they need to do next. It's having offers that link together. So one naturally feeds into the next. So there's always somewhere for someone to go, whether they're just discovering you or if they've been in your world for a long time. And it's having a sales and marketing approach that works together rather than a collection of disconnected activities that each live in their own little world. When that's all working together properly, your business runs even when you step back. Sales come in consistently rather than in peaks and troughs. Clients stay with you for longer. They get better results and they refer people to you. and you feel like the CEO of something real rather than something that you're making up as you go along and hoping for the best. But when it's not working, you've got gaps. And the things that fall through those gaps are nearly always the sales. So let me walk you through the 5 stages of a connected ecosystem. And as I do it, I want you to be really honest with yourself about where yours is working and where it might be leaking a little bit. So let's start at the beginning. How does your dream client find you? How do they first come into your world? Now, what I see with this stage is 2 things happening, most frequently anyway. And they technically can look like the same thing, but there's 2 different ways that you need to fix these things. They're 2 completely different fixes. So the first looks like you're everywhere. You're on lots of different platforms. You've got a podcast, a newsletter, you've got a Facebook group, you're on LinkedIn, you're on Instagram, maybe even on TikTok. You're doing all of the things all of the time, and none of it is working particularly well because your energy is so spread. So nothing is actually being done well enough or consistently enough to actually build that momentum. The other version looks a little bit more like this. So you've got a lead magnet, you've got content, but the message isn't right. So the people finding you aren't quite your people. Or the lead magnet promises one thing, but your offer delivers something else. And the person who downloads it never becomes a buyer because there was never a thread connecting the 2 things together. Both of these are attraction problems, but they need to be completely different fixes. So the noise problem, where you're doing all of this stuff, needs cutting back. You need to choose where your dream client actually is and show up there properly rather than trying to show up everywhere badly. The gap problem, that needs clarity. You need to get really specific about who you're talking to, what they actually need, and you need to make sure everything in that attract stage is pulling in the same direction. Because if you get this attract bit wrong, everything that follows on is so much harder. You've brought the wrong people into your world, you've lost people already. You're nurturing the wrong people, interacting with the wrong people. No wonder people aren't buying. So let's say you have brought the right people into your world. You've done attract really well. They found you, they like what they see. Now what happens? Now this is where a lot of businesses have a gap they don't even realize they've got. Because most people think showing up on social media is enough. Post consistently, be visible, and people will naturally warm to you and eventually buy. They will. But posting is not nurturing. Posting is literally broadcasting. And there's a massive difference between nurturing and broadcasting. Nurturing is building a real relationship. It's the follow-up conversations when somebody comments on your content. It's the DMs that aren't selling anything, they're just building that relationship. It's the emails that give something really genuinely useful. It's the consistent showing up in a way that makes someone feel like they know you, because then they can trust you. It makes them feel like when they're ready to buy, you're the obvious choice. Now, most people are skipping this stage entirely, or they're just doing this really surface level stuff and then wondering why people aren't converting, why they have a huge audience, yet a teeny client list. The like no trust that gets someone to buy doesn't come from content alone, it comes from connection. And connection requires more than a post going out 3 times a week. It needs the conversations. And then the next stage flows directly from nurturing. Because if you're not getting attract and nurture right, this stage won't happen. Because this is where you interact. And interact is where the real relationships are built. It's the deeper conversations. It's having that call with them. It's being in the same event as them. It's the moment where something goes from passively consuming your content to actually engaging with you as a person. the deeper conversations. And for a lot of business owners, this doesn't happen. There's no bridge between the content they consume and the offer they could buy. No invitation to take that next step that isn't a sales page. The sales page has a purpose, but they need to interact before that. There's no way for them to get a feel for you before they commit to anything. And that bridge absolutely matters. It matters enormously because people buy from people they feel like they know. And you can't really know someone just from a social media post. You know them from a conversation, from a room you were both in, from a podcast episode where they said something that made you think they were talking directly to you. Now, what does interact look like in your business? Is there somewhere people can experience you before they buy? Events? A free call, maybe? A challenge? A community? Something that creates that feel of real connection. Because without it, you're asking people to go from stranger to buyer with nothing in between. And that's a big ask. Okay, the bit everyone thinks is the problem when actually it's usually a symptom of everything that came before it. Because if attract brought in the right people and nurture built the relationship and interact created that connection, the buy stage, the bit that everybody thinks is the problem, should feel relatively natural. I'm not saying easy, but natural. But when it doesn't work, when people get to the buying stage and don't buy, usually there's a couple of things. One, you're not asking for the sale. Now, this one is really common. Your content is great, the relationship is quite warm, and then when it comes to actually inviting someone to buy, there's no clear call to action, no follow up, no conversation that moves things forward, no, do you want to jump in? Just a hope that people will find the sales page and basically figure it out for themselves. Or the offer isn't talking to the right person, which goes all the way back to attract. If you bought in the wrong people at the start, you're now trying to sell something to someone it was never designed for. And no amount of excellent copywriting is going to fix that. Well, there's no follow up. Someone shows interest and then life gets in the way and they forget, and you never remind them. And so the sale just disappears. People need to be reminded. The buy stage is where courage really matters. The courage to ask, to follow up, to make it easy for someone to say yes, and to make sure your offer is landing in front of the person it was actually designed for. And then the final stage, they get the sale, they celebrate, they deliver, and then when the program ends or the project completes, nothing happens. The client just disappears into the world, and that's the end of that one. Off we go to the beginning again. There's no thought about what happens next, no invitation to continue the relationship, no ask for a testimonial or a referral, no natural next offer for them to move into, just an expensive goodbye. And what that's really costing you is much more, because your existing clients are your warmest audience. They already know you. They already trust you. They've already experienced your work. So getting them to buy again or to refer someone to you is so much easier than finding a brand new person and taking them through the whole ecosystem from scratch. But most businesses treat retention as an afterthought. That's if they think about it at all. What happens when someone finishes working with you? Where do they go? What do they buy next? How do they refer people to you? How do they leave a testimonial that supports your future sales? How do you stay in their world so that when they're ready for the next thing, you're still their obvious choice? If you don't have the answers to those questions, you've got a retention gap. And it's one of the most expensive gaps there is because you've already done all of the hard work to get that client in the first place. And then you let them go away without even asking them to stay. So here's what I want you to do, because you know I always give you an action. I want you to go through all of those 5 stages: attract, nurture, interact, buy, and retention. And for each one of those things, I want you to ask yourself honestly, is this working in my business? Is it connected to the stage before and after? Or is there a gap somewhere? A gap where sales might be falling through? Because the sales you're losing, they're not lost because your offers are wrong or your content isn't good enough or you're not working hard enough. They're lost because somewhere in the journey from finding you to buying from you and coming back again, there's a break in the path. And that's where people are falling through. A connected ecosystem doesn't just make your business more profitable, it makes it easier to run, it makes it less manual, it means there's less firefighting, less chasing, and much more of the good stuff. Consistent sales, happy clients, a business that feels like it's actually working rather than something you're holding together with willpower and hope. That's what's possible when everything is connected. If you want help building yours, that's exactly what my simple ecosystem program is designed to do. I'm going to pop you the show notes, link, should I say, in the show notes. Go and have a look. But what I want you to do, even if that isn't right for you, is go and have a look at your 5 stages: attract, nurture, interact, buy, and retention. Where are your sales leaking? Thank you for listening. I'll see you next time.